Back in 2018, Zynga announced a partnership with Lucasfilm to make a Star Wars mobile game at a studio under Natural Motion, which we now know as Star Wars Hunters, the multiplayer arena game coming to mobile and Nintendo Switch next year, developed by Boss Alien. As part of the deal, there was an option to make a second game as well, and at this moment in time I can't imagine that Zynga are actually working on this second game, as all the focus will likely be on Hunters given the importance it has to the company. My assumption therefore is that this second game is dependent on the success of Hunters. So let's assume this second game does eventually come out. What could it be about? Well, a couple of weeks ago I put up a poll on Twitter asking whether or not you'd like to see me come up with some Star Wars video game ideas and make videos on them. The overwhelming majority of you said yes, so that's exactly what I'll be doing for the rest of this video. So the idea I have for this second game isn't exactly an original idea, because it would basically be a remake of the classic game Star Wars Demolition, but instead of using iconic Star Wars characters and original ones that they used in that game, Zynga would just use the ones that they have created for Star Wars Hunters. For those who don't know, Star Wars Demolition released in the year 2000 and is a vehicular combat game that allows players to play as some new and existing characters to compete in a sport created by Jabba the Hutt. Each character had their own unique ship, as you can see now. Whilst I never got to play Star Wars Demolition, I do know someone who has, so we have discussed it at length, and after a bit of research into the game, it does honestly sound a little bit like Star Wars Hunters but in vehicle form. Even the background story is similar. In Demolition, Jabba created the sport to profit on as pod racers had been outlawed, and they had arenas on different planets. In Star Wars Hunters, the arena where the game is set was created by a Hutt crime lord, and they now profit off the competition as it draws in plenty of fans across the galaxy. It honestly wouldn't surprise me if Demolition was one of the biggest inspirations for Hunters. Initially I thought it'd be cool to have this Hunters vehicles idea simply as a game mode for Hunters, but I feel like it's vastly different to what Hunters is trying to achieve, and the scope is genuinely there for it to be its own game with several modes, cosmetics and all the rest of it, just like Hunters does for its characters, but with this game it would obviously be for the vehicles. What would be great about this being their second game is they already have the characters and the general lore established, so they already have a really solid platform to be able to build off of, especially if Hunters is successful. Talking a little bit more about the game itself, you could have very similar game modes where you have to escort something from one side of the map to the other, as well as capture the flag or control, or even just a team deathmatch like mode. The potential for modes is definitely there. With regards to the gameplay, there are a number of ways you could do it. You could either do it so it's just ground vehicles or just air vehicles, or you just mix it up a little bit. I do think mixing it up with some air and some ground would be quite fun to do, but I do think it would be easier and potentially more fun to make it so that every single character has a ground vehicle and an air vehicle. For example, Sentinel's air vehicle could be a TIE fighter or any other TIE ship, and then his ground vehicle could be an AT-ST or any other walker. Another example is Aaron Tal. His ship could be the Mandalorian Fang Fighter, but then his ground vehicle could be the Mandalorian Balatar class swoop bike. I think it's also worth adding that given this could be a Hunters-like game, each vehicle would have their own unique abilities, and potentially even their own class like Hunters does with damage, tank and support. It worked really well in Star Wars Squadrons, so I think it would work well here given that it's a somewhat simplified version. Now, assuming that every Hunter would have a ground vehicle and an air vehicle, I think it would have to depend on which game mode you played. So some game modes could be specific to ground vehicles, whilst other game modes could be specific to air vehicles. Hopefully you get the general idea of where I'm going with this though. With regards to launch and post-launch content, they could simply launch with the characters that Hunters eventually launches with, and then post-launch content could be in release order of Hunters when we eventually know what that is. But obviously in this second game they'd be introducing a new ground and air vehicle. I think the potential for a game like this is absolutely there, and I feel like it would be a ton of fun and a great way to further extend the lore of the arena and build it into something bigger than it already is. Anyway guys, feel free to let me know what you think of this idea in the comments below. Do you think a Star Wars Demolition remake but using Star Wars Hunters could work or not? That is it from me today though. Thank you all very much for watching, and may the force be with you always.